It is a brand new book that is grabbing headlines for its controversial content, which criticizes the state of America's struggling educational system. It's called Class Warfare, and it exposes the truth about why so many of our kids are failing in school and who's standing in their way. But the union-loving, left-leaning media, well, they don't want to hear it, and they're attacking the author with some very harsh, blatantly biased reviews. And here to defend himself against the onslaught and to explain what does need to happen to put the future of our country on the right track is the author of Class Warfare, Inside the Fight to Fix America's Schools. Steven Brill is back. How are you? Long time.
Sean.
How you been?
Good.
What is it? You're a stranger. We don't see you.
Yeah.
All right. Go back to Reagan and A Nation at Risk. What has happened to the educational system in America, were it done by an outside entity of force, would be tantamount to an act of war.
Well, for sure. That's what
Right?
they said then. And since then, which was 1983, we've spent, 2 or 3 times as much as we were spending per student on education, and we really haven't made any progress. And what I decided to do, and you and I go way back, and I don't have any axe to grind in this. I just got interested in this when I saw the rubber rooms in New York where teachers were being paid to do nothing.
There's a lot of them. There's a lot of people around the country would be shocked at what these teachers are paid to do nothing.
So I started to look at this, and I did the reporting. I went to dozens of schools. I interviewed teachers. I spent hours with Randy Weingarten, the head of the union, but I also read the union contracts. And I also went to charter schools, some of which occupied the same buildings as the public schools, and I saw the difference. And the difference is, on page 136 of a union contract, if a principal isn't allowed to comment on the format of a teacher's lesson plan, that's not a good formula for having the teachers do well. What you really have in the United States of America is the largest workplace, 3.2 million K-12 teachers. And it's the only workplace where, until very recently, performance doesn't count at all. How long you breathe is what counts, and the unions have not liked that message. It's an undeniable message. I'm hardly the only one who's saying it, but the advantage I have is I actually did the reporting instead of quoting people on one hand on the other hand, and I have no axe to grind.
Why then the criticism? Why then, you're telling me before we come on the air, we were talking about the reviews by people that admit they never read the book. It's pretty amazing.
Well, for journalists, it is a little shocking to, to go to Google and look at a review of your book when the first sentence is how terrible it is, and the second sentence is, I haven't read this book and I don't intend to. What's more shocking is that the education columnist for the New York Times, a newspaper that I usually worship, unlike you, interviewed
I'll forgive
me
you for that.
and started to go off on one of the charter schools that I wrote about and started to quote some data which I knew was wrong. And when I tried to explain to him that it was wrong, he said, I don't have time for any of this expletive deleted, and slammed the phone down. Now, for someone like me who's been a reporter for years and years and, respects the New York Times, that was a rude awakening. And what I'm trying to do is get the American people to understand what's really going on in our education system. It's not about money.
Are you convinced that conservatives like myself that have been so critical of the New York Times, I just read their editorial pages, the slant in their stories, you think maybe now this experience, and I'm not looking for validation here, you think maybe we're more right than you thought as a...
Certainly in this context, when it comes to questioning this union, which is a very powerful union, I have to agree that you're right. But, I'm a reporter. I like to take things one by one and not try to make a generalization.
Right.
But it's awfully tempting to make a generalization when you have this kind of experience, or, when Slate, the website, reviews the book. It's the only other really negative review by any reputable publication. And it turns out that the reviewer works for a, quote, think tank, which all the board members are heads of unions. Randy Weingarten is on the board, and the teachers union donated $600,000 to that little think tank, and none of that is disclosed in the author's ID.
That's unbelievable. Do you think, and we only have a minute, I've always said there's an unholy alliance between the teachers unions and Democrats. It was an all-girl public school in New York, in Harlem. Kids wore uniforms, all girls, successful. Kids loved it, parents loved it, scores went up. They sued us to close it down.
Sure,
Why?
they've brought suits all over New York and all over other cities because it is a threat to the union. One little footnote, there is one Democrat, you're not going to like this, who actually, in this case alone, has defied the Democratic Party, and that's the President of the United States. He has encouraged this reform movement. It's the one place where you can look and say, hey, the guy actually did something that he promised and that he believes in.
Listen, if we fix the education
and his biggest
system,